Yo, Chodmunch fans, this is History Bro speaking to you. Me and Chodmunch are old friends in real life. We go a ways back, so I says to him one time, I says, "Oi, Chodmunch, why don't we do a collaboration one time?" And he said, "Sure, why don't we do something that's sort of in the spirit of both of our channels?" So we decided to do a little list of history's dumbest fails. Okay, I hope you enjoy. Here it goes. Okay, let me tell you the story of Count Emicho of the Rhineland. It's the late 1090s and the First Crusade has just been called. And while it takes months, maybe a year or two, for the great magnates of Europe, the great princes, the powers of Europe to get their armies together, there are in the meantime a few very zealous individuals who are ready to just rock and roll straight away. They've got tens of thousands of supporters, popular support, just normal men and women, that are ready to go to the Holy Land right away to reclaim it in the name of Christianity. Peter the Hermit is probably one of the most famous ones, but Count Emicho of the Rhineland had one small contingent of his followers who followed a goose, an actual goose that they thought was imbibed with the Holy Spirit and was divine in some way. And they followed it into the Holy Land where, perhaps unsurprisingly, soon after crossing into Asia, were all cut to ribbons. It was just a terrible massacre. And so the life and achievements of Count Emicho of the Rhineland are really, it's difficult to describe them as anything other than a pretty dumb fail, really. Or how about this for an all-time fail? In the middle of the 1800s, near the British Cape Colony in South Africa, there were the Xhosa people. And one day, this young woman, this girl, Xhosa, who said she had visions that the best way to rid their land of the white colonisers, the white invaders, was to slaughter all their own cattle. That was her idea, that was her vision. And the elders went along with it. And thus it was done. They slaughtered maybe 400,000 of their own cattle and then set fire to all their own farms in some sort of misguided sense of spite, I suppose. And, it led to a massive famine. Tens of thousands, maybe as much as 40,000 of their own people largely starved to death. And it ruined their economy and society, essentially. And so any resistance that they would have been able to put up against the British was completely destroyed. So, it's pretty much a complete fail there. Now, ever heard of the Battle of Karansebes? It's a great example, or a terrible example, depending on how you look at it, of friendly fire, of blue on blue, when a single army starts fighting itself, and even after perhaps it realises what's going on in the darkness and the confusion, doesn't stop, because men have died and there's pride on the line. Well, this is what happened. It was the late 1780s, and it was the Habsburg Austrian army versus the Ottoman Turks in sort of Central Europe. And the Habsburg army, their cavalry were out ahead, and they found some peasants who had loads of schnapps, loads of liquor, and so they got drunk on it. And then a small scuffle broke out between these cavalrymen and their infantry, and they were drunk and they were running back in the darkness, and the main body of the army thought they were being attacked by the Turks, and it turned into a full-scale retreat, and lots of men died, probably only a few hundred. Just a few hundred men probably died, and popular legend has it there might have been thousands. But either way, it was a clear fail, and a really dumb one at that. Alright, get a load of this one. Between 1958 and 1962, Chairman Mao in China decided upon a policy which was called the Great Leap Forward. And amongst other insanities, he decided that he wanted to try and kill as many sparrows as he possibly could. Specifically sparrows, because he was told that they were destroying crops and eating too many of the crops. So he ordered that as many of them as possible should be killed, which was done. It meant the direct destruction of some fairly delicate food webs, and it only further contributed to the famines and to the horror within China, because of course without sparrows, all sorts of other pests will just run out of control, and that's exactly what happened. So, pretty bad, pretty dumb fail there, Mao. Alright, well, how about the story, the epic fail of Al-Mustasim, the 37th and last caliph of the Abbasid Caliphate? He was in control of Baghdad and that whole caliphate in the 1250s when Hulagu, one of the greatest Mongolian warlords, perhaps the greatest after Genghis Khan himself, rocked up outside his city walls and demanded his surrender. Now, Al-Mustasim's epic fail comes in the decisions he made. There's a letter that survives where Hulagu says, look, if you give up, your life will be saved, the life of your people will be saved, your city won't be destroyed, your caliphate won't be completely annihilated, all you've got to do is bend the knee, basically. But Al-Mustasim is too proud, I suppose, because he refuses to. And so, as was clear to everyone involved, the Mongols did just sweep in, destroy Baghdad, raze it, and that was the end of the Abbasid Caliphate forever. So yeah, that last caliph there, Al-Mustasim, did make the wrong decisions. It's quite an epic fail, really. In France, between World War I and World War II, they decided to build a giant line of defences along the border with Italy, all the way up along through the border with Luxembourg and Belgium. But the flaw in the plan was that this line wasn't one continuous stretch of bunkers and trenches and zeroed-in machine gun nests and artillery. It was in fact heavily defended in the places the French thought the Germans might come back, and lightly defended in the places they thought they would never be able to punch through. One of those places was on the Belgian border with the Ardennes forest. This Ardennes forest was thought of as impenetrable. There was no way an army could get through there, certainly not a mechanised army. The French just thought there was no way the Germans could roll tanks and things through the Ardennes forest. But that's exactly what they did, bypassing the Maginot Line completely, which the French had spent many, many years and vast amounts of treasure building, and it was completely circumvented. So talk about one of your all-time backfires. Okay, what about the famous assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, which most people know sparked off World War I, essentially? That day, those set of events are such a fail. You can't quite believe the course of events. I mean, first of all, he knew that there were assassins out to get him in Sarajevo. It was just known. There was intelligence that people were going to try and kill him, and he sort of essentially ignored it. And then on his formal procession through the city, he insisted on having an open-top car. He didn't necessarily have to have that open-top car, but he did. And earlier in the day, before he was killed, there was a failed assassination attempt a few hours before, where they tried to throw bombs at his car, and he'd been unscathed, but people around him, near him, it was a very close run thing, they'd been injured, and they'd been taken to hospital. And instead of just leaving the scene, leaving the city, getting the hell out of Dodge, the Archduke insisted on visiting the people in the hospital. So staying around, which was another crazy risk, really. And then keeps driving around the city later in the afternoon, is still in the open-top car. And then the course of events just get almost farcical. His driver takes a wrong turn and gets a bit lost and doesn't know what to do, so decides he can turn around and do a 3-point turn. But in those massive old turn-of-the-century cars, doing a 3-point turn is not an easy thing. And so he just spends ages sort of faffing around in the street trying to turn around. And it just so happens, by a pure coincidence, that a whole nother assassin is just standing by, thinking that the day is over. And then suddenly, just in front of him, while he's buying a sandwich, he sees the Archduke's car. And so he just walked up to him and shot him, shot the Duke and his wife. And the rest is history. So just a set of failures there. Alright, how about this for a giant cock-up? In the late 1850s, in India, there was a giant rebellion, a huge insurrection against British rule, sometimes called the Sepoy Rebellion. And in reality, there were a plethora of political reasons, socio and economic reasons, for this giant rebellion, which ended up engulfing huge swathes of India. But the thing that really sparked it all off was that the British cartridges for the rifles were said to be greased in cow or pig fat, and you had to bite the top of this cartridge to pour the powder in. And, on religious reasons, Hindus and Muslims would have problems with having the pig or cow fat touch their mouths. And so that was the reason why a lot of the native battalions began to revolt. It swept through the East India Army of Bengal first, but went all the way to Delhi, and thousands and thousands of people were killed, and massacres and reprisals, and it changed the whole course of history in the subcontinent. So it was a massive thing, and it all just came from probably a small number of people, maybe even one person somewhere in London, in Whitehall, deciding that it wouldn't be a problem to grease the cartridges that way. Terrible decision, terrible, so dumb. Okie dokie Chodmunch fans, I hope you found that interesting and or entertaining. If you haven't already, do subscribe to Chodmunch. And if you like the cut of my jib, why not consider clicking on the link in the description, heading over there and maybe chucking me a subscription as well. Alright, until next time, take care. Bye bye.